Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Games Bay. And this really isn't going to be about games today, is it? I mean, you saw it in the title. It's about Disney. And from those who know me or knew me from my Twitch streaming days, back when I actually did streaming, it was pretty well known that I was kind of a shill for Disney. And I don't mean that I'm a Disney adult in the sense that I have, art on the wall or anything like that. I'm not a collector of Disney things. I'm not an eBay collector. It's just not me. No, I'm one of those people who just enjoys the parks for what they are. Even as an adult, you can go to a Disney park and just enjoy your time. Especially when I went for the first time in my life about 8 years ago. In my adult life, I should say. I went when I was a kid, but that was so long ago, and I never went to the American parks. I happened to go to Euro Disney, as it was known at the time. But when I went back 8 years ago as an adult, I was very shocked how much I really loved the place. It was an experience that I just thought was going to be childish and fun, just something familiar and, to kind of spark a little bit of youth, I guess. But it ended up being so much more. If you've never been to Disney, you really can't explain it to someone else until they've actually seen it for themselves. The theming there is just so worlds above anything else that you would see in your daily life. And when they say you're going to go to the bayou, you're going to go to the jungle, you're going to go to a royal castle, you're going to go to this to the Polynesian Islands, you're going to do all of these things, and there's a hotel or a land dedicated specifically to that, and it might be a little touristy, but it's really well themed. It immerses you in everything. And I loved that. I went back several times, and it got progressively more expensive each time that I went. Up to the point where I started to wonder if this was worth doing anymore, mainly because of changes that Bob Chapek made. And you can see with the title now, that's all changed. Iger's back. And he, in my opinion, is, when you talk about the three big CEOs, and I'm only saying big because one of them's relevant right now, but you've got Eisner, you've got Iger, and you've got Chapek. One represents the worst of everything, and that is Chapek. In fact, I just did a little name search on him just to see what I would come up with. And this is what you do when you search up Chapek. You go to the news and you look and you see, is he the worst CEO? Well, yes, he was. The fans celebrated his firing and then cooking the books. People are actually looking for things that he screwed up on. Whether or not they're true or not remains to be seen. But from an outsider's perspective, so many things looked like they were going horribly wrong and should never have spilled out into the public. And it leads to stories like this, where even if they're true or not, people are looking to find out the dirt on Chapek. He was just so bad at his job. So one thing people are going to be talking about, rightfully so, but their main focus is going to be on what Iger can now do to fix things. So going back to this, I mean, Iger was brought back, and the primary reason he was because the impression to the shareholders was that leadership was poor. So get somebody in that can project a good confidence to those shareholders, bring the stock price back up, and hopefully boost some growth. I mean, that really growth is the direction that they needed to go with Iger. Chapek didn't really have any projects that he was working on at the time. There are a few expansions, like, for example, the Villains Land that's been teased at, I believe it was D23. I wish I had a concept picture of it now, but apparently I brought the wrong. Where is it? I am sure I had this somewhere. There was a, yeah, there it is. Just go over here. That's the concept art of it. A village in the shadow of villains. It's supposed to be behind Big Thunder Mountain at the Magic Kingdom, a park that desperately needs some help and attractions. Then there's a potential overhaul to Animal Kingdom. I know that the Dinosaur Land has been under the spotlight for quite some time. Rides there were getting dismantled. It looks like there's going to be a retheming, but I believe that the rumors that I've been reading say that something else is in the pipeline, which is good. Animal Kingdom also needs a little bit of an overhaul. And then the Toy Story Land, Star Wars Land at Hollywood Studios, which may get renamed one day, who knows? Those just came out, but no new parks, nothing since Shanghai Disney. The one park that Iger actually opened up, and most of these expansions were definitely going on, at least in the planning phase, when Iger was around to begin with. So as far as new things going on in Disney, you got Disney Plus, again, an Iger thing. But that's really the only way they're growing. Now, if you know anything about Disney's big business, they have what? They have 3 different lines of business and sort of a 4th soft one. So they have their cruise line, they have their parks division, and then they have their media arm. So all of their, we would call it Walt Disney Studios. And that soft 4th one is where I point to Disney Plus, because their media arm, they kind of have this side hustle now, or their main hustle is they're accumulating IPs, and they've got this bank of properties that they can work with now. So Disney Plus is kind of the focus of that. And I would say that their studios are somewhat separate from that, just because I think that one can drive itself, the other kind of needs to drive itself too. And of course, I forgot the 5th one, which is ESPN. The last thing, of course, though, is that he needs to repair the relationship with the fans that was basically crippled by Chapek. Now, when Chapek was in charge, if you were visiting a Disney park or even really consuming Disney in any form, he really made it the company's point to make it obvious to you that they were after every last cent in your wallet. Anything that could be upsold, they upsold. Things that used to be free were charged for. This specific to the parks anyway. Anything that could have its price raised, they would do that. And I think that Chapek got a pass early because people gave him the benefit of the doubt when it came to the pandemic. People also said, Disney Plus turned out really well, so let's see how this goes. But reports have come out since then that Chapek actually wanted to fire everybody, and Iger needed to talk him out of it. Let me see if I can find that article, but talked out of firing employees. Yeah, there was this article that said when the pandemic happened that, I wish I could find it. But what I remember reading is that when the pandemic happened, they had an opportunity to wait for just a couple of weeks to make sure that there was some relief package in place for employees that were fired. And Chapek didn't want to wait. He wanted to let them go right then and there. And Iger had to basically tell him, you need to chill, wait on this. And it turns out, I think, in 2 weeks, it was some small amount of time, the package went through and all these workers were eligible for unemployment perks or something, but they were far more protected than they were when Chapek wanted to fire them. So there's a sense of, let's reverse all of these evil actions. I mean, Disney is Disney. Iger might not be the shining white knight that people make him out to be, but he's not outright evil. He's not a villain like Chapek is. So the fans need to hear that Disney themselves are doubling down on all these positive changes that Iger is bound to make. And he's already starting to make reversals. He's already started to announce, hey, this is the message we want to send. We might not do it. We might not cut prices, but what you are going to find is that we're not going to go out and exploit people like we have been the last couple of years. I know exploit is kind of a loaded word. You don't have to buy or purchase anything Disney, but Iger has a chance in 2 years to really do something to further boost his legacy. Because the way that I feel is that Eisner and Iger are almost equally important CEOs. Now, Eisner did not handle everything well. He was not the greatest leader in the world. He had a lot of flops at his feet. But whereas Iger has had a lot of success, a lot of profit, a lot of growth, a lot of acquisitions, but not a lot of risk, unless you count those acquisitions. Eisner took a lot of risks, and he did this sort of expansion era in Disney. And I was just looking this up. If you count water parks, and between 1982 and 2005, Disney had opened 11 parks across the world. I mean, just think of that. That's almost a park every 2 years. In the beginning, there was the Magic Kingdom. 11 years later, there was Epcot. Disneyland was 16 years before. I mean, what did they open? 1955. I should know this, right? Yeah, 55. But you had 55, 71, 82, and then starting in 83, it was just bam, 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 bam. All these parks opened up. And then 2005 came around. Hong Kong Disneyland opened, and then nothing for 11 years. That number has come up before, hasn't it? It came up between the Magic Kingdom and Epcot. So between the last two parks, there was an 11-year gap, and we're already at a 6-year gap since the last park opened. And I know the 50th anniversary that was coming up. They just wanted to put these new rides in, make a big, get a lot of revenue, have a big celebration. They didn't plan on a pandemic. And now that the pandemic's over and the celebration's over with, they can take that revenue, their bank is not as loaded as it once was, but it's still loaded, and start to do these things. Now, you can't just open 11 new parks, but one thing that I feel like he needs to do is he needs to open another one. And this is where the title of my video comes from, because I think that there are a few unspoken things that Iger needs to do or should do that would either cement his legacy, make it greater, or fix problems that he's not really focused on. And there are problems. The first problem was before the pandemic, and that was rising costs, and it was overcrowded. And I'm specifically focusing on Walt Disney World, but it applies to Disneyland. They only have 2 parks there. Probably applies less so to the other pairs in Paris and Tokyo. I don't really know anything about Hong Kong and Shanghai. It's just not my interest. I'm more thinking about Florida when I think of Disney, because that's the theme park capital of the world. That's where people go when they want to get away. Disneyland is a different kind of visit, I feel, because it's in the middle of the city. You're not getting away from much. But down in Disney World, there was a problem, and that was that these parks would be at capacity or near capacity all the time. And while it was rare that they had to turn people away, what you found was that there was a lot less to do than you would think. So when you think of Disneyland, you think of all the history, all the rides that are always at Disneyland, and maybe would be at a counterpart, but not guaranteed. So you have your Main Street, you have the I almost said it had the railroad, but but there is the railroad. You have Jungle Cruise, the Indiana Jones adventure that you don't find in Walt Disney World. And I'm just talking about bigger rides right now, because as an adult, this is what I pay attention to. Big Thunder Mountain. You have the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean. Peter Pan's Flight is not an adult ride. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, again, not. It's a Small World. Star Tours, Space Mountain. What else am I missing? I feel like that there are a couple of things I'm missing. Splash Mountain, that would be the other one. And the Matterhorn. Plus a lot of small rides to fill out the gaps. And when you go to the Magic Kingdom down in Florida, you get a lot of the cores, but there's no Matterhorn there. They have the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train ride as its counterpart. They're now getting Tron. They usually had some failed shooting gallery or interactive experience. I think Monsters, or is it Monsters Inc. that I'm thinking of? Or am I thinking Stitch's Great Escape? You have the Haunted Mansion, you have Pirates of the Caribbean, you have Jungle Cruise. It's very spread out, and it doesn't feel quite as dense. Autopia, that's another one that's in both. It doesn't feel quite as dense, and all those things that fill the gap in Disneyland aren't at Disney World, despite having more space. You're not going to find the submarine, the Nemo submarine, for example. That's not there. Autopia, it kind of takes up that area, but I feel like it's clunkier and bigger for no reason down in Walt Disney World. I'm not really sure. Oh, you don't get the Go Coaster, Gadget's Go Coaster. In fact, you don't get any of Toontown, so that includes the Roger Rabbit ride. There's a sense of emptiness down at Walt Disney World. And when you go there, you're walking around a lot, but unlike Disneyland, there's just not something for you to turn and see every second. And Disneyland is getting expansions. They're getting Star Wars Land. They're probably going to get this Villains Land too, I think, or is that going to be specific to Disney World? I should have thought that out, but I didn't think I was going to talk about it all that much here. I know it's coming to Disney World. But so when you go down, if you're an adult, you have a few rides you want to go on, but once you've seen the Haunted Mansion, you're pretty much done with that. And the only thing you want to repeat are the mountains, the coasters, and the thrill rides. And thankfully, they're adding Tron into the mix. And that just looks amazing. In fact, I'll see if I can find a picture of the progress. Tron Coaster Progress, Disney World. And see if I can get you a decent picture of it. Now, a lot of these websites that I end up linking to are, strangely enough, Disney Food Blog is a really good site for news, but there's Inside the Magic, Disney Insider. I think it's almost done. It's looking like it's very close to completion. It's got the canopy, it's got the coaster in place. It's just the outside theming and the paint job I think they have to do. There's not much left, and it's right next to Space Mountain, and they desperately needed that, because when I was there, you were fighting for Space Mountain, you're fighting for the Mine Train ride, and Big Thunder Mountain eventually isn't a wait late in the day because everybody's overdoing the other things on the east side of the park. But when you pack in a sub-capacity crowd, just under capacity, where you can still get in the door, but there's only 3 rides the adults who are staying up late want to ride, or during the day when everybody's in the park and even the family spread out to do these rides, you can find yourself waiting in a line for 3 hours just to ride that one thing, which is usually the Mine Train ride. Space Mountain, I feel like, should never be a 2-hour wait. It can be had for 15 minutes in some spots. But you find that in the other parks as well, with the exceptions starting to be Hollywood Studios, where Star Wars Land and Toy Story Land open. You have 2 big ticket rides in both of those lands to go along with the Rock and Roller Coaster, and you have the new Runaway Disney, Minnie and Mickey's Runaway train thing. I haven't rode it yet. I haven't ridden it yet. When I went down last, I got to do everything in the park except that Runaway ride. That used to be the Great Movie Film ride. I'm sure Disney fanatics out there are going to be kicking me. Like, do you not remember the names of these things? These are classic rides. No, I'm not that good. Animal Kingdom has a similar problem. You have Dinosaur, but once you do that, you don't really want to go back and do it again. And then you have the Expedition Everest, and you have Flight of Passage, and that's it. Everything else is a do once, forget it for the rest of the day thing. And finally, you have Epcot, which was never really a ride place, so that's not the focus of it, and they're starting to remedy that. But they have Soarin', they have Frozen, which is not really a thrilling ride, and they have Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, which that's really cool, and Test Track. Now they've got Guardians. So they're adding rides into a park that didn't really need to lean on rides. But you still have these high crowds that only really have a few places to go if they want to do something thrilling. And that was a problem before the pandemic. And now they're putting this reservation system into place because everybody wants to go back to the parks. It's making it really, really difficult with all of these systems in place to actually enjoy things and spread out the crowds and do something while you're there. Right now, unless you're paying double of what you're paying on top of a ticket already to pay for Genie Plus, to pay for the Lightning Lane, you could spend $200 on a ticket and still only get to ride a handful of rides because it's just so packed. And again, this was a problem before the pandemic. So how do you fix these problems? Well, they're starting to. as I mentioned, they have overhauls in pretty much every park. They have additional rides in pretty much every park. And when you do that, you make it to where everybody doesn't have to be at one park to do something that they want. They can always find something to enjoy in any park. So you shouldn't have as many spikes in attendance to one park over another. Now, if you've never done this before, I implore you, do this before your next vacation, because this is really cool. And I'm actually excited to see something I didn't expect to find, which is, this is called Undercover Tourist, by the way. And before you ever go, it's good to get a sort of an idea of what you're going to do, especially if you're going to have to make reservations to a park. You don't want to book a park that is going to be too packed. You want to have some idea of what you're doing before you go. But scrolling down, you can see what the crowds are expected to be at what park on any given day. So it gives you a gist of what's available. In fact, I'm going to knock out, I think I want to knock out a couple. I'm not going to stay here for that long. But for example, on Sunday, the 27th of, and this would have been last month. Let's do something coming up. So let's just do today. So today it's going to be an above average to average crowd day. Stay away from Epcot because they have a special event going on. That's going to draw crowds, especially the adults who are there. But all of these parks opening hours are there, and it's going to tell you what traditionally the most packed park is going to be. And they've got this kind of down to a science, which is, what do people tend to go to? Now, in a perfect world, everybody should sort of have an equal share of that crowd. You shouldn't run into a problem where you really want to stay away from Epcot over Magic Kingdom. But if you have less experiences available per park, it leads to some predictability as to where people are going to go. But I implore you, check this out whenever you get a chance to, if you're going to a park. And this works for the West Coast too. And the second biggest problem that kind of goes along with this is, we live in a crowded world now. You know, our patience with each other and our personal space has sort of gone out the window. And what you're seeing now is a movement towards, let's see, I'm just going to pull this up really quick. Tokyo Disney, and I think Disney Sea as well, has effectively banned influencers, which is a stupid term, by the way. I don't create content. I'm just sitting here talking to a microphone right now. But the social media crowd, the influencer crowd, the vlogger crowd are really getting in the way and annoying people who bring their families to the park, or even people like myself who just want to go and relax and stay away from people. And even in Florida, where the space is much more spread out than in Disneyland, oh, this is far worse in Disneyland, you can't turn a corner without somebody sticking a video camera or a cell phone up in your face around the corner. It feels very capitalistic on all fronts. You have new merchandise, for example, that is released, and people who have season passes will go into the parks, scoop up 100 of them, and leave, and put them on eBay before anybody who's just there on vacation can even get a chance to buy one. These are actual problems that have been going on in the parks for years. Again, all of this before the pandemic. And it makes Disney World not a fun place to want to go to, because you have a ticket, and let me see if I pulled this up already. I had a couple of tabs open, but I didn't really have the ticket over. Oh, that's coming up later. I'll get on that in a moment. Oh, by the way, the retheming, the concept art for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, that's an overhaul that's happening. But let me rewind back to that. With all of these overhauls that are going on too, these already limited parks with very little to do in some cases have a key ride that's being shut down, or a key pathway shut down. In Epcot, for example, the moment you entered the park for a while, you had to veer off a detour path, or you had 30% of your walkways closed off to you, big ugly walls in the way, construction going on. I mean, it was not the experience it was 5 years ago. And that's common for many of the parks now. There's, I think, I I know Splash Mountain was one. I think Pirates of the Caribbean went down for like a week or something like that for work that was being done. But yeah, when you only have a few rides that the adults can go to and one of them goes down, it's not a good look. I'm going to see if I can find this really. Oh, if I just would have checked this last tab. Yeah. So standard theme park ticket, select the number of days. Remember that individual days are going to be more expensive than booking multiple days. They want you there for longer to spend more money, obviously. So a 1-day ticket is your worst approach. But starting from 109, one park per day, let's just say we're going, on a Saturday or even on a Monday. I mean, if we were to go to Walt Disney World this coming Monday, it would cost $140. That's insane for a ticket. So you're spending that. You're spending $15 to get Genie Plus. So that's $155. You might have to buy at least one lightning lane. So that's another $15. So we're going to say it's now can I do math? $170. And that's before you've bought any snacks or a meal or a drink or anything like that. A hat is going to cost you like $40. So, but yeah, just to experience a park, it's going to cost you $170 to actually go in and do something worth doing. And that's insane. And it's going to be packed. It's going to be a miserable experience. It's not getting better. When Chapek started cutting corners, he cut the number of people there, and ride uptime, if I remember correctly, actually did go down. People's happiness with the systems they were using. I mean, I did a full rant on this not too long ago. It was a miserable experience just to do basic things. So you don't want to spend $170 to go and be ticked off most of the time. Stand in line for 3 hours. And it's Florida, so depending on when you do it, it's going to be hot. And you're not going to be happy. You know, when the margaritas you were drinking before you got in the line at Frozen is going to have been drank and worn off by the time you even get on that ride, and you're going to be annoyed again. So, yeah. So all of these were problems that were happening before the pandemic, and it got me thinking, does it really have to be that way? There are a lot of problems that Disney could solve if it did one major thing. Now, I have a couple of ideas they could do after this, but my attention went towards somewhere else. Because if you think about it, if you go to Disney, you got to get their hotels. Otherwise, you're staying outside the park. It's not as magical of an experience, but it's also a drive and you're forced to rent a car, even though you really just should rent a car when you're down there. Doesn't matter if you're on property or not, but you'll have to rent a car. Let's say just $300. You've got the park ticket. So let's just say that you actually get, let's just do a 5-day. That's a normal trip, right? So we'll count the upcharges in there and we'll say that it's like what, $500. Let's go $600 for the tickets for 2 people, $1,200 plus the $300 to get the rental. Plus I'm going to even just go cheap here. If you can get a room at this price, I'd be shocked, but $250 a night for a room. So that's $1,250. You're looking at $2,750. And that's before you actually buy one bit of food, one drink, one souvenir, or even go into, I guess I'll give you the option of a Lightning Lane or Genie Plus, but if you want the other, it's going to be more. So it got me thinking, this actually took me to Japan once. I sat there and thought about it. Disneyland is just too expensive. It's going to cost, I think I calculated it at about $3,000 to $4,000 just to do a trip we were thinking of doing to Disneyland and one other place. And we weren't even going to be gone for a few days. It was ridiculous. And it's not that much cheaper down in Florida. So I got looking at a park that I went to as a kid. And this park is amazing. It's called Efteling, and it's in Holland or the Netherlands. Somebody's going to get mad at me for saying both. I'm sorry. I don't know who calls it what. My bad. But I went here as a kid, and it's an amazing place. One thing that sets Efteling apart, or even it sets it apart from most theme parks you've ever been to, because it's more nature focused. It's a spread out park with a lot of green space, a lot of really family friendly things. It integrates itself well with the nature around it. And if I'm not mistaken, this was actually a inspiration for Walt Disney himself when he was doing Walt Disney World. And that's why you get a lot of that green space there and a lot of really well taken care of grounds. It's huge and it is so pretty. It's massive. If I were to just guess off the top of my head, if you're looking at this map I'm looking at right now, let me just open it up here. If I were to just hazard a guess, I would say that this is about the size, if you cut this road off right here, this probably is the size of Walt Disney World. Okay, I take it back. It feels more spread out than it is, but maybe it is the size of Walt Disney World. No, these lakes are huge. This has got to be bigger than Walt Disney World. Anyway, so it's a huge park. It's got a similar number of rides than the Magic Kingdom. In fact, I think it even has more attractions than the Magic Kingdom. Let's see, for Genuine Daredevils. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 thrill rides are in the park. That you already know that's more than Walt Disney World. So it's packing rides, it's packing green space, and it is genuinely a pretty park. And I'm thinking, why don't I go there? Because look at this. Even for their biggest ticket there, it's 46 euros. And I know the exchange rate fluctuates and it's not a 1-to-1 anymore, but let's just say on its worst day that it's a 2-to-1. Even if you double this, you're still looking at $90. That is almost half the price of a Walt Disney World park ticket. I'll just say it, with the exchange rate, if it's not 2-to-1, this is half the price of one day at Walt Disney World. And that's incredible for a park that does arguably more. Next year the prices are going to go up a couple bucks per ticket. That's it. I mean, it's unreal that you can do the same park or more and it costs cheaper, and people look at Walt Disney, or the people at Walt Disney World want to sell you on this idea that they have to charge more. And I get it, they employ a lot more people. I get it, they have this Disney magic. I get it, they're supposed to demand a premium for their product, but wow. I mean, it's hard to justify. It really is. But I think that Disney could learn something from this. Another park I want to draw your attention to is Cedar Point. If you've never heard of this is a really big coaster park in the US. It's in Sandusky, Ohio. And I'll just look at the tickets there. I mean, this has probably, a dozen solid, some of the best coasters in the world. And it is definitely half the price. Good any day admission, preseason sale, $45. They're not open, they're seasonal. But it's $45. That is a third of the price of a day at Disney World. And they have to maintain all those coasters. It's not like Disney has a lot of coasters they need to maintain. In fact, their mechanical work, they have a lot of mechanics and tech built into their rides, but literally everything in this park is a high risk. It's a high risk ride. I mean, let me just go to their coasters really quick. If you've never heard of this is ridiculous, the kind of stuff they have. But the Blue Streak, their original coaster, where is their mine ride? So they have a mine train ride. Trying to fit the Corkscrew, that's the original one that did the first loop. But they still have the Magnum. The Gemini, they have two coasters in one, so you can count that twice. God, where is it? This is going to bug me. Iron Dragon. That's a really cool ride. I've been here before and I loved it. The Magnum XL, at one point, tallest, fastest in the world. It is huge. No, it's not the Max here. What is it? There's Oh, drag. There's something dragster. Uh, Something dragster, I think. It's going to be the last one on the list, I swear. I can't let this go, though. I can't let this go. The slingshot. Oh, God, it's going to bug me. Anyway, there it is. Top Thrill Dragster. It's one of their tall, steep, fast ones that loops you around. If this can come in at a third of the ticket price, I'm sorry, but Disney World, you have a lot to explain here. And I think that Iger could turn this into a positive for himself because he only has one park for his legacy. He's got Shanghai Disneyland, and that's it. He's opened one park. So he needs something else. And if he could do it to address all of the issues that Disney is having, that could really benefit him. Now, what kind of a park should it be? Well, what I'm thinking is they already have the map for the things they want to do. You know, if you're looking at Disney World and the technologies they've introduced a move away from fireworks and an introduction of laser lights. They've introduced trackless designs for several rides. They've been using interactive movies with these trackless rides and kind of add this 4D experience to make rides that are really just on the ground and basic seem a lot more thrilling and immersive than they really are. They are trying to lean heavily on technology for things like ordering and line queues, things like that. They really do like to use more technology to achieve a cheaper result that feels like it's so much more than it really is. Also, Disney is no stranger to this, but accessibility is a big deal. In the modern world, you really cannot get away with introducing things. Actually, let me finish the thought and then I'll tell you the example. You cannot get away with introducing new rides if you're a family park like Disney World and expect to get away with a situation where you're not being inclusive or you're not providing accessibility options. Avatar, Flight of Passage, when it came out, there were issues with that because riders were in an uncomfortable position when they wanted to ride this. Not everybody could fit in, and they were having a big issue getting people into their specialized seats. Really, if you didn't fit the mold of what could get into one of these seats, you weren't riding the ride. And they had a lot of pushback on that. Not outright hate, but when you're waiting 3 hours to get in the line and you have a back issue and you get in only to find out, I cannot get in this position. There's just no way. No other ride asked me to get in this position. You can see why people push back. I'll just show you a seat and Flight of Passage seat and see if I can find a picture of this to just let you know what I mean here. I'm going on Google for this one, but these seats look like this. So you have to lean into this, put your legs in the back, and you're leaning forward, and this screen comes up, and you're looking into this 3D massive screen like you'd see in Soarin'. And so you're kind of leaning forward, and the bottom underneath you moves and kind of glides around, so you feel like you're in flight, or at least on the back of something that's in flight. And that's the whole point. But you're scrunched forward. It's almost like you're leaning forward on a motorcycle. And it caused problems. But even if people didn't outright hate it and they just went, look, I can't ride that ride, the reaction from this is, look, accessibility is a big deal. You're going to have to address this. Not everybody wants a thrill ride either. And I'm even going to say something. I'm an adult and I don't necessarily need thrill rides or rides every single time I go to Disney. It's actually something I love to go down for and never really get the chance to do, is just relax. Trouble is, I'm not dropping $150 to walk into a park and relax, because if I go to that park, it is Epcot. I'm going to Epcot. I'm going to be walking 7 miles around that World Showcase. I'm going to be drinking maybe 2 drinks that will clock in at $30 together. and I've paid $150, I'm not just going to sit and stare at the water. That's a lot of money to not do anything. But Disney's in a unique position where they can alleviate so many problems by taking this into account, adding to their attention to technology and the things that they have successfully done. Remy's Ratatouille adventure, the Winnie the Pooh ride in Tokyo Disney, those are trackless designs. They're not big roller coasters that require an insane amount of maintenance. They're not high risk things. You have the night shows now. They're doing laser light projections. I say you do the exact opposite of what people expect you to do, because it's cheap to do it compared to rolling out an entirely new park like Universal is, the Epic Adventure, I think it is. Rather than roll out, 7 top dollar roller coasters and thrill rides, why not tone it down a bit? Give Disney fans the Disney feeling somewhere else. If there's another thing I'd love to add to this, it's Disney Parks' original IPs are being shoved out the door at breakneck speed. I wouldn't be surprised if Expedition Everest lost its theming in the next decade, because literally everything that has gone into the parks that was original is being shoved aside in some way, shape, or form. Space Mountain took over by Hyperspace Mountain, the Star Wars theming. Haunted Mansion got taken over by the Nightmare Before Christmas for certain seasons. Pirates of the Caribbean crossed over into movies. Okay, they just did a couple of updates to add Jack Sparrow in there, and you're all good. So I'm not really bothered there. But Splash Mountain is going to change its theming, and I know it wasn't original. It took cues from A Song of the South, but it was original. Matterhorn, Autopia, all of these things are original IPs, and you're starting to see this erosion happen. In Epcot, the Frozen ride that used to be, I never wrote it, but it used to be specific to Norway. It wasn't Frozen, and they've added theming to that. So you're starting to see, yes, you have business synergy, but a lot of these original ideas that were born with the parks when they were released are just getting shoved out. I know that there was a small, if fleeting, plea to keep Figment. Yeah, that's it. Figment in the parks, because people thought he was going to get shoved out. So there's a real need to sort of preserve that Disney parks originality. And I think that having a new park could actually answer that problem. So first, having a park that is built on nature, green ideals. Again, these are Disney fundamentals that they like to push, so why not? Original IPs, accessibility, and this new technology that could be very cheap to throw up rides and not really focus on them so much could really offer a lot. The first thing is, I would say, it needs to leave Florida. It needs to leave California. Disney needs to spread to somewhere else. Now, I can't tell you exactly where, but honestly, I would pick my state, Oregon. Not because I'm biased and because I want it next to me. That's not the reason why, but it's just a good fit. I could say that Vermont might be like a really good place for this too. Ohio. There are plenty of places that I think could work. Minnesota would actually work really well. In fact, it could add a winter aspect to it that you might think won't work, but it really does work. If you've never been to Tokyo Disney or Disney Sea, I encourage you to go, because even in the winter, it snows in the park. They're still open. They're gorgeous parks, and they're arguably just as gorgeous in the winter time. Fall can add a lot. Having things green and warm all the time is really nice. I mean, it's very tourist friendly, but it doesn't have to be that way. You go down to a Florida park to, get in a t-shirt and shorts, prepare to get wet, prepare to get rained on briefly for 5 minutes, and you're going to be outside the whole time. It makes sense. But I would say that a new park should go somewhere else. Try something different, spread out, give people different places to go, at least just one more place. They do a really good job on theming, and you've seen it with places like Alani, for example. You don't have to be at a Disney park to get a Disney experience and to really get something out of their Imagineering department. If you haven't seen Alani, it is in Oahu. It's just west of Honolulu, and it's a gorgeous place to be at. It's very expensive, I will say that, but this is an incredible place, and it's not attached to a park. There's plenty of things to do. You can swim, snorkel, they have all the usual hotel stuff. You have Honolulu right there. You have the entire island of Oahu. It's a really lovely place to go visit. And like I said, you don't have to go to a park to experience it. And that's kind of the thing I think they should lean on, because this is a newer addition to Disney. This opened within the last decade? It's very new. And it focuses on people, culture, and nature. To a lesser extent, nature. A new Disney park placed somewhere outside of the parks with more actual park to it. Draw a little bit of that Efteling. Put some green space in there. Give people a garden to go to as well as a theme park. Make it accessible from the start. From wheelchair ramps everywhere to designing your rides around inclusiveness and accessibility. I think you don't have to retrofit or remake an old ride to do that. You don't have to alienate people, because this is not a place that I would see as being a place that you have to throw up thrill rides on. You can. In fact, there are a lot of great ideas that I would have for such a park that really would be rides that could be classified as thrill rides, but really just about an immersive Disney nature experience. For example, if you've been down to Walt Disney World, you have the Slinky ride, and it's about as basic a roller coaster as it is, but it does more gliding than it does thrilling you. And it's fun because you're overlooking this little toy box of Andy's World. Why not do something similar with nature? Why not incorporate things that inspire you after you ride it to want to experience nature in a different way, or want to, I guess, create a synergy with yourself and nature that you can't do in a theme park. I hope that makes sense. I think SeaWorld tries to do this sometimes, but they fail ultimately because they are not known to really care all that much about their animals. So you have nature, you have accessibility, and it takes people away from the other parks. If there's one thing that Disneyland and Disney World could absolutely use, it's 50,000 people a day that are not at the other parks. And it takes away some of that influencer toxin away. You shouldn't have a park that's built on merch. I mean, you can certainly sell merchandise there, of course. In fact, you should. I mean, it's going to be a Disney park. Why not do that? But have a place where adults, mature people, and families can go to get a quiet experience, to get their merchandise there, to enjoy themselves, to be calm, away from the heavy crowds, not having a camera pointing in your face the entire time, and not having these massive crowds ruin an experience that should be very intimate. Now, I'm not saying the theme park should be intimate, but there's no way it can be intimate with that many people walking around you. Those crowds are just too much. I think that Iger needs to do this for other reasons too. First, is the Epcot project. Now, if you go back and look at Walt Disney's original plan for Epcot, he was talking about a a self-sustaining city of the future. He was thinking, the monorail, the people mover, these futuristic ideas. He wanted to see a greenhouse, solar, on-site generators, water control. He wanted this to grow into a Disney city, essentially, a self-sustaining one that would experiment with technology that was not in regular use yet, to put it to practical use and see how it worked out. And Disney themselves have so much technology at their disposal, they're not doing nearly as much as they could be doing with it. And it's nice that you have this, turning car and a roller coaster gimmick for Guardians of the Galaxy. That's really great. But is there another application you can use for these technologies that might add something to a very nature-inspired park? I think there is, especially when you're talking about a place that should never have a firework ever on its property. Maybe for like a New Year's or Christmas celebration, that might be nice for the people that live in that area, but they've shown what they can do in transforming their castle. Let me see if I can look that up. Light show Disney Castle. I think it's Cinderella Castle. Let's try that. Disney Cinderella Castle. I know I spelled it wrong. It'll correct it for me. But they took away fireworks and started reskinning. Like, this is not what that castle looks like, but they effectively, with light projection, reskin the castle. And they can do it on a whim whenever they want. They have managed to have this be a canvas for movies and scenery, flames, fireworks. They've taken what used to be a big bang boom and put it onto this castle that now is the major focal point of the entire light show at night. And they've done this at Disneyland as well. By creating a center stage, much like the tree at Animal Kingdom that you can project light off of, if you incorporate one very nature-inspired thing in this nature park, you could have a fireworks-free site. Just a blank slate that you designed from the ground up specifically to take in and be transformed by light projection. Something that the tree down in Animal Kingdom I don't think ever really was designed for, because the technology evolved after the park aged into that era, I guess. When it was released, light projection was sort of it was a thing, but it wasn't the way it is now. We can do a lot more with this because of technologies we've had in the last decade. So the tree was obviously not designed for current technology, even though it was designed to be fireworks free. And I think that Animal Kingdom is a really good showcase for what a nature-focused park could do for itself. I think Epcot as well it gives you the ability to travel without actually traveling anywhere, maybe just to Florida, but you never have to leave the country to go to Germany, to the UK, to Paris, to Mexico. You can get it all down at the World Showcase. I think that if they took cues from Animal Kingdom and Epcot and Disney Sea, definitely Disney Sea, where you have this port of entry for different regions of the world, and you incorporate that somewhere, and let's just say, what about Minnesota? Why not? Why not south of the Twin Cities? Why not? They already have, the Mall of America. They're shown to be very friendly. They have Valley Fair there. They're shown to be very friendly towards these types of projects. The nature there is amazing, although the mosquitoes might kill the experience. That could be a big deal, but I'm just picking a name out of a hat. It could really be an example project for the future, and it wouldn't necessarily involve a lot of construction apart from a parking lot, but I'm sure that Disney has something up their sleeves that could really make that be an example of what you can do with a new theme park. And that's something I think that they really need to experiment with, is how do you make a self-sustaining theme park? It doesn't have to have these high thrills. It doesn't have to have big explosions. It doesn't have to have all this mechanical moving parts. But if, 80% to 90% of your park is based on nature, is based on travel, inspiration, seeing the world, not necessarily the countries that are in those parts of the world, you need a new park. You need new inspiration. You need to get people away from those core two locations of California and Florida. And Iger needs something to really make a statement and say, we say that we're really good at the environmental cause. We say that we're really in touch with nature and cultures around the world. We say that we're inspired to do better, to have solar farms, to make our operations as green as possible. We say that we care about the people that come in through our doors. We say that we care about the world we live in. These are all things that Disney says constantly. If you go to Epcot as well, will very happily tram you through their greenhouse to where they grow things that are used at restaurants at Epcot. They're very happy to tell you, don't litter, don't pollute. We have videos that show you what happens when you do that. But then you walk out of those attractions, you look around and you're like, how the hell is Disney living up to any of this? I mean, sure, a solar park, a solar array down along the parks, that's one thing. But when you have people who are traveling by plane to get to your park, renting a car, driving there, consuming by shoving stuff into their mouth from all these different countries, in riding these, like you go to Autopia and it smells like nasty, it smells like a nasty mechanic shop. It smells like pollution. Why can't Disney create a statement that says, this is our park of the future. It is a fusion of the world we live in Disney ideas, and let's create some new IPs. Let the Imagineering department go a little nuts with this. Have the Imagineering department come up with 30 attractions. Say they don't all have to be rides. None of them have to break the bank. You can come up with ideas that you think will be right at home in the original Magic Kingdom Disneyland. You come up with your own narrative. Make it Disney inspired. Make this your example of Disney's future. Don't just rely on its history, tearing down that history, replacing it with new IPs and movie licenses. Create something brand new. I think that if Iger were to do something like that, then he would have one hell of a legacy to leave behind. Shanghai Disneyland is not the legacy that he could be leaving behind. This is his opportunity to make a really big splash and introduce a quick new park for the US that addresses so many of their problems, or at least makes it more accessible. Make it a $50 ticket too. Don't charge $150 to get through the gate. I think that would give people families, the families that really after the pandemic wanted to go down to Disney World or Disneyland couldn't do it. And I thought that was very striking when Chapek took the reins, coming out of the pandemic and reopening the parks. Chapek sat down and told the country and the world, I'm going to raise prices because everybody needs Disney. They want to come back here. I'm going to exploit that. What he didn't say was something that Iger probably would have said, even though he might not have followed through with it completely, which is, we're not raising prices. We're going to keep them because we want to invite everybody back. We know you missed the world, and the first thing you want to do, you want to visit Disney World. We want to welcome you. We are America. We came out of this together. We want to invite you back. Chapek said, no, we want to push you away. Only the richest people that survived the pandemic are welcome at our park. That's a horrible statement to make. And I think that Iger has a chance to really reverse that and put a good direction on the company. And somebody might say it's woke to make sort of an eco-friendly park, but it's not. It's just the way the world is moving. And you don't have to have any sort of political stint to make something like that. If you can make a zero emission park, if you can make a park that inspires people to do better and more people see that rather than the mass consumerism that is, Disneyland and Disney World, that would be a really good balance for the Disney park portfolio. And I think they should do it. That's really my main point, but there is one other thing that I think Disney could absolutely do. I know I should probably just leave it at that, but when I get rolling on Disney, I get rolling on Disney. But mainly because they're the people that I think could pull off some of these great ideas that I have, but you need some financial heft to get the ball rolling on some of these ideas. And I usually point to Disney and go, they could do this. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to make this into a two-parter, just so you can come back to this a little bit later, spend your attention somewhere else, come back to me and watch part 2, because I have one more idea for something that Disney could do that really could make Iger look sort of like a genius that's in touch with America. which would really be me being in touch with America. But you know what? If he put his name on it, I'd be fine with that. I'll see you in a minute.